Go. So Emma, we all know that you work for Phillip Dutton and basically control all of that universe. You're the official cat herder of that team. But how did you even get into grooming professionally, and how did you end up at Phillip's barn?
You want the long version or the short version?
I got time.
We got time. We got time these days. So been with horses all my life. Came over to the States in '98, and I was actually meant to be just here for a year. I was meant to then go home to the real world and get a real world job. And I actually was in Boston, Massachusetts, and worked for Adrienne Iorio, and I ended up being with her for 7 years. So, you know, long time. And I actually, with her barn, I did a bit of everything. We had boarders, we had school ponies, she evented, and she was actually building up her event horses at this stage. And at the end of the 7 years, we had a string of like 12 event horses. We'd gone to Kentucky, I don't know, three times, I think. And then the actual sort of my light bulb moment, we did a trip over to Blenheim horse trials, and I got to fly the horse out of Toronto over to Blenheim. And it was actually the year of Jerez, so we stayed at David's Green's place. The Australian team were there getting ready to go to Spain, and it was just sort of a surreal experience. But at the same time, I was like, wow, this is how I get to play with the big boys.
Nice.
And that is sort of really when I cemented, like, I didn't necessarily want to ride. I was struggling with my back anyway, so riding actually, you know, I'd get off and be not bent over double for like 2 minutes before I could stand up straight. And I'm like, well, if I want to, you know, go to the World Championships, go to the Olympics, I ain't doing it riding. So that was definitely my light bulb moment, that I wanted to be a groom. And then I can't remember, it must have been a couple years after that, the job opened up with Phillip, and it was sort of a, you know, well, if I'm going to do this, you might as well do it with the big guns. And obviously I haven't taken a look back really since then. So yeah, it was that travel experience flying with the horses, and then taking the opportunity when it arose to move into a job that I've definitely ticked all those boxes.
Yeah, no. How many Olympics have you been to? Three. How much of your day when you're at the barn is actually grooming the horses versus, you know, doing the barn chores and organizing things and cat herding and managing the horses and the staff? Like, what percent is grooming versus everything else that you do?
Oh Lord, a typical day, I was never even looked at it like that, to be honest, but honestly, I'd say about 3 hours of my day is actually hands-on grooming. Definitely what I've sort of been enjoying with this no showing is right now I would say that has gone up to, you know, probably 4 or 5 hours. Like, I can actually spend time with the horses because I haven't got to worry to pack the trailer, or right. You know, I'm trying, you know, sort of, you know, the horses going to the vets and stuff like that, you know, what sort of maintenance care that way is obviously slowed down a bit. So I actually have had more time to spend with them, which has been great for me. So, but yeah, putting an hour on it, we're a busy barn, you know, and we're still staying pretty busy, you know, now, keeping the horses in work and stuff. So probably hands-on for me, I'd say 3 to 4 hours a day.
Wow. And in that 3 to 4 hours where you're physically touching and being close with the horses, do you have any like grooming priorities? Are you more concerned about like hoof care, coat care, manes and tails? Do you have something that you like really like to do?
I always say, to me, it's everything. I mean, it's everything. You've got to have your eyes on everything. And for me, getting my hands actually on the horses, running my hands along their backs, along their muscles, where are they sore, where are they maybe a bit stiffer, how do they react to, you know, certain pressure points. For me, that is a telltale sign of, you know, what are they doing during the day? Are they just sore because they've had a gallop the day before, or is something else going on? And so whenever I am grooming the horses, like it's to me, it's really, really important about physical touch. Yes, grooming is very important for good coat and, you know, picking up, getting them clean and everything, but it's more about feeling the subtleties of something changing within their body that is normal or abnormal.
Doing that, you know, it sounds like also you do more healthcare than you do actual grooming. Like the grooming is just like the superficial stuff. You're really there to make sure these horses are sound and healthy. And do their personalities, do you have some horses that are like, it's this? Or do you have some that are like, I'm going to give you one very vague clue and you have to like figure it out over the course of a week?
God, that's a tough question. I think I have horses. I think it's important. Like, there's definitely horses that are very stoic, and you know, maybe the subtleties of if they've come in with a fever, or you know, you know, just last year I had one horse. He was, excuse me, everything was normal, like completely. You know, he was eating, drinking, pooping, you name it, like all that was normal. But just he got very stoic in the stall and was starting to stand in the back of his stall, and I'm like, just wasn't him. But you know, within 5 days, we're like, he's not right. Like, I can't tell you what it was. And then he did eventually start developing a fever. And
but I do also want to talk about a specific horse. I met him the very first time that I met you. You were at Morgan Park and you were grazing Z, and he was the most chillaxed guy ever. And I've seen him in Florida a couple of times, and he's always like super chill. And then last year in Kentucky, I saw Phillip with him in the warm-up, and I was like, I'm gonna get a picture of Phillip getting flung across the arena. He was insane, but just very, very excited and pumped, and obviously really, really fit. So tell me more about Z in terms of what's he like around the barn, and is he a big goofball, or is he like super chill normally?
That's the thing. So he is actually very chill on the ground most of the time. Like, if you go into his stall, he is one that tends to stand a little bit at the back of his stall. He's not always going to come to the front. And you know, grooming wise, he is, you know, he's not going to stand there and be really interactive with anybody else, but at the same time, he is very good at letting me know if something's wrong. You know, if he's a bit sore that day, he's very expressive. You know, a couple of his spots, he loves his ears being rubbed. You know, like I use the hands-on gloves to like put my fingers down his ears, and he just like, you have to, you know, take him off cross ties so he doesn't hang himself. You know, like, and then so he's very expressive that way. But if you actually just go into his stall, you know, he's not necessarily going to come up to you and be like, hey, how are you, or in your face. He is he's one of those that to go out, he loves his turnout, like absolutely loves his turnout. And if you don't turn him out within the first, you know, he goes out overnight, and if you don't turn him out within the first 2 rounds, he is banging at his door like, what the hell, why aren't I going? You know, so he definitely has one of those mixed personalities. My ADD child I was on about, he is all just get me out now, and on the cross, you know, unfocused. And so Z definitely has his times, and then it shows. I think he's a very introverted horse. I think he carries his stress on the inside a lot, and it shows. I have to try and get him out of his stall a lot, taking hand grazing. He feeds off definitely my energy, and if I'm stressed, like before, if something, I don't know, say I've forgotten something and I'm like, oh crap, you know, and I'm tacking him up for cross country, he definitely feeds off that type of energy. So he's actually taught me to try and like have my inner zone around him, because obviously the more nervous he gets, then as you say, you've seen him how he can be at the start of cross country, and you know, I don't want to add to any of that.
Well, I was just thinking, you know, watching him go, he's obviously a very large creature. And on the ground, when I met him, he's just been absolutely divine. But when I see him go around, I'm like, I am very glad that is not me. Very glad.
Oh, dear. Yeah, it's funny. I think that's what I love about the event horses, though, right? Like I think most of them sort of cherish the time with their own person, but then they go out in competition and they love it, and they're just in beast mode, and you know, and that's part of the joy of watching them go out and do their job, you know.
Yeah. Do you have any like hacks or grooming tips and tricks for somebody that's just getting into showing and maybe wants to have that like little extra edge of looking good in the show ring? Because obviously, I mean, you've been to 3 Olympics, so you're not going to send like a dirty horse down center line or into the start box.
Tips or oh gosh, I hate being put on the spot like this. Thanks, Liv.
Yeah, well, I do what I can.
So one of my go-to little let's say we're going to cheat here. I do cheat. Shapley's does a great spray called High Gloss.
Yes.
So if there are any areas that, you know, have picked up dust or something, and you know, that's always in my bag, and that always goes in their tails. And then if there's any areas on the horse that I'm like, oh, that could be shinier, then quick spray of that, and they're just like, that just pops, or especially on black points like hocks and knees. And then I also always have a little bit of baby oil around in my bag, and right before Phillip gets on, I'll just put a little bit on a cloth, and I'll actually wipe that all over the tack, and it just pops the shine to the tack right before he gets on.
Do you have like a favorite brush or something that is just yours and yours alone, that you're like, this is mine, don't touch it, they're mine?
My girls would probably say yes.
Yes.
Like, so right now, like, we've separated out all the brushes, like everyone's got their own grooming bucket to stop, you know, cross-contamination of the virus and stuff, and I put mine together, and I'm like, nobody touches that bucket. You know, the girls always laugh. But my hands-on gloves are I have probably gone through about 3 sets of hands-on gloves, and I like to actually use them for bathing to start with all the time, and then that softens them up, and then I'll like put them into my grooming kit for dry grooming. And I mean, there's no better way of like lifting up the dirt for and getting into the nooks and crannies. I always, you know, through the clinics now, I'm like, don't forget the elbows, don't forget the back of the pasterns, like, you know, their ears, get, you know, top of their ears, you know, I find that with those, a lot of horses will let you, you know, actually groom their ears and stop you from getting that crud on their ears that they can get.
Thanks.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.